This is the OG Maruti 800. It's actually the third generation of 800s that came into production. The first generation rolled out in 1983 till about 86. It was actually Indira Gandhi's son who came out with a dream car for the people of India. Then it came quickly revamped to a second generation that came out till 1997, which had a bigger engine, improved bodywork, and then this came out post 1997, and there have just been minor tweaks by Maruti Suzuki since then. Chances are you either learned how to drive in one or you sat in one. And under the hood, it's an 800cc engine. So it's pretty frugal little engine that'll give you anywhere between 10, 12, 15, you name it, depending on how you drive. So the car comes in a front wheel drive. It's got 5 gears. It's a manual transmission. It's got a fuel tank of over 20 liters. It's got a ground clearance of about 170 millimeters. So with a wheelbase this big, it's more than enough for like off-road and on-road. So without further ado, let me hop into the driver's seat and let's go for a drive. Driving the 800, it's a very super raw feeling car. Like manual transmission, short gear shifts. It's an 800cc after all, 794cc to be precise. And the thing about this car is that you feel just about everything with it. The bumps, the feedback from the steering wheel. What really is great about this car though is its smaller dimensions. It's a small car. You know even if you can't see the front of the bonnet, you know exactly where the front is. You know exactly where the 4 wheels are gonna go into, whether it's a pothole, a speed breaker, or whatever. And you might be thinking that this tiny, less than a liter engine isn't sufficient. But the thing that you have to remember about this car is it's a small, less than 1,000 kilo car. Like maybe you and a couple of passengers, 4 passengers, then you would probably be close to like over 1,000 kilos. But until then, this is about 600-700, and it's got enough of heft and pickup that you put it into a lower gear, it will pull up even on steep inclines like this. Sure, the engine works a lot more than compared to like much heavier, bigger cars, but foot down and it will do a decent job of getting you from point A to point B. And that is exactly what this car was meant to do. It was meant to be a people's car for people in India and later in Nepal. And it was meant to get you from point A to point B and to protect you from the elements when you're driving. So the heat, the rain, the cold in the winters, and it just does that without any complaints. As for the feel of driving this car, very intuitive, very strong sort of feeling. You feel the gear shifts, you feel the brake, you feel the bumps. It's not the most plush sort of shocks out there compared to what you get in cars nowadays, but it does a so-so job of like soaking in irregularities and bumps. And you might also be thinking 170 mm of ground clearance, but the wheelbase is this big. You really don't need to worry about like how big of a bump there is, because chances are by the time you're worried about a certain pothole on the road, it's already gone. Like nothing to worry about. And again, the brakes on this car, because that's also another thing. The brakes are adequate. 4 drum brakes. Again, it's a very light car, so you really don't need that much of force to brake. And what's really cool about this car is that it's got just about enough torque in production that when even you're on like a higher gear like 3 and 4, it will slowly pull. Like you don't need to bring it down all the way to 1 unless you're like in a proper standstill, and yeah, just do the job. The one thing though that you will have to be prepared about is that it's a very bare bone sort of chassis, And so you will feel a lot of vibrations and noises inside the car. Like there's a lot of noise from the outside coming in, which cars these days do a great job of insulating. You'll also, when you rev up the engine, feel these vibrations in the steering wheel, in the dashboard in front, and there's no going around that. There wasn't any thought to insulation back then, was there? So I'm gonna quickly go over the exteriors of the 800, and obviously it's a early 2000s car, so you've got more of that bolder, boxier shape than in that fluidic design you get in cars these days. So starting from the front, two wipers at the front. This is again a pre-technology era car, so you don't have any sensor at all. You have your window wipers at the front, you have your window washers at the front, and then a very slanted flat bonnet coming down to the car. You have your air intake, basically your radiator. If your car has an AC unit, that's also pulled in from this entire, all the slots here. You have headlights here, side lights here, and then some variants of this car also come with fog lights. And now coming towards the side, the car comes with a standard 12-inch wheel. So these wheels, this one actually has a bit of a rim cap on it, but the wheels are very stock and they've got a good amount of tire wall, because these tire walls really do good in like soaking in potholes, unevenness on the road. Then you have a bit of a side light here. Then your mirrors, not automatic, not folding. You didn't have those back then. And coming to the side, it's a very flat sort of body that just goes all the way to the back. Your door handles, good and very like workable door handles on the side. Big mirrors, because that definitely was a thing back then, unlike now where you have like different slanted angles and like designs in the windows. These are just big windows to like let maximum amount of light come into the cabin. Then the brakes on these wheels are actually both drum brakes, both at the front and the back. And considering that this is a car that is less than 1,000 kgs, it is more than adequate. So coming back towards your C-pillar, you actually have another window pane here to peek into your boot space, but it's a relatively smaller size C-pillar. And then your bumper just hugs the car at the back, and as I mentioned, it's more of an edgier sort of thing compared to cars these days that have like a very rounded about sort of bumper. You have rear lights at the back. Your reverse light is also here. Your indicators are also here, and your stop lights are also here. You have that old trusty 800 badging, and then you have your boot at the back. And then if you look down below, this is a petrol car, so it does come with an exhaust pipe down there. So as for the interiors on this car, it's a very robust little 800, and you get exactly what you need in a car, nothing more, nothing less. So you have your AC controls up here, your cooler and your AC with all these knobs, your gear lever in the middle. It's a proper handbrake. And then you have your indicator and your like wiper stalks here. You have a horn in the middle, and then your dashboard comes with a glove box in the front. You do have the option to like customize your car with different accessories, music players that would all go somewhere in the middle. You have little cutouts for AC vents. Please do remember that this was a car from the early 2000s, late 1990s, and having these little things like an AC in the car or like a cassette player down here was all like the state of the art thing. So the ceiling of the car, there are sun visors on top that actually come out. You have a door light here, you have a rear view mirror here, and then your seats are, for such a low car, your seats are like quite high up. You have like, though you don't see the bonnet at all, it's a very tiny bonnet in front, as you saw, so you can clearly have a good idea of where the wheels are in the car, because you can actually see it. Like everything on the interiors of the car you can see properly, and you can distinguish well and great. All right, as for the back seat of this car, I actually have the height adjusted in my height, which is about 5'9", 76 centimeters, and good footwell room at the bottom here. Good, decent amount of knee room. I mean, it's a small hatchback size car, so it's more than adequate. And because it's, again, a boxier shape, decently tall in height, you do have like a fist and a half of like headroom on top, so I think that's more than adequate. While this car was made for 5 adult occupants, it will be a bit of a tight fit at the back where you'll probably need to shimmy around here and there to like squeeze in 5 big size adults, but 3 kids will definitely fit at the back. And at the back you do have like 2 sets of seatbelts at the back. These modern amenities like the rear armrest, your cup holders, your AC vents, again, this just goes to show like how far modern technology has reached in cars from the early 2000s. If you think about it, it's been what, 2024 when I'm recording this. I think it's been like a quarter century, and technology, just features that you find, I'm like so appreciative of things that engineers and like developers have put into like the well-being of passengers, not just at the front but now also at the back. And because it is a petrol engine car, you do have a transmission sort of tunnel, an exhaust pipe sort of tunnel in the middle. So if you are an occupant sitting in the middle, there will be a hump in the middle that you'll probably have to like put your leg on either each side of. So at the back you do have a manual lock unlock, and there is one hydraulic pump on this side of the car. It's a bit of cost cutting Maruti Suzuki did back then just to like keep the car under. Fun fact about this car is that when it was first released in the mid 80s, late 80s, this car would just about come under 50,000 IC. About 52,000 if you include like insurance and everything. But other than that, the retail sticker price was about 48,000 IC. And fast forward to the 2020s, the car price has definitely gone up. But anyway, boot space on the car. Boot space is decent. It's about 120 liters of boot space. The seat can be folded down. It's a one-piece seat. So you pull on this, and then the seat will fold all the way. And that'll be more than enough to like chug around a couple of big suitcases and boxes. So it's been about a day of driving this classic 800, and the raw driving sensations aside, it's like almost the perfect city commuter from 20 years ago. Sure, there's a lot of like vibrations and the engine isn't as powerful as what you would get in modern hatchbacks, but if you're on a very tight budget, or if this is the first car you want to get into, like you just started driving last week, then this is honestly a great option for you. As much as you want to beat around this car, and I'm not just talking like physically getting into accidents, which might happen when you're a beginner, but messy downshifts, abrupt braking, late gear shifts, this car, though you're not meant to, it'll hand it all and it'll not complain about it. It won't send you with an astronomical bill to the workshop after one bad gear shift. Maybe 50 more and it might, but you've got to remember modern cars are a lot more sensitive. They're a lot more powerful, they're a lot more sophisticated, and they're not going to tolerate 20 bad shifts. They're going to send you straight to your workshop, to your mechanic. So if you're on a budget, if you're a beginner, then this is honestly an awesome car. And I, for one, from that very sanitized world of driving my own car, which is an EV and an automatic, it's almost a pleasure to like get behind such a raw and like engaging sort of car once in a while. I do imagine that driving this in like bumper to bumper traffic would be difficult, but hey, on the other side, 800cc engine, even with AC on in the traffic, it will nowhere close to guzzle as much as gas as any other 1.2 liter engine would be doing. So yeah, almost perfectly awesome for like a point A to point B. And then once you start making more money, once you get a better feel of how to drive your car, you on the road, confidence, you can always upgrade. But yeah, anyway, until then, hope you like the review. Drop me a comment down below and I'll see you on the next one.